Hello everybody watching at home, I'm Ethan Staple. You're probably wondering where the next episode of the Dossier is. Don't worry, it's coming, but this is something a little bit different. Annie Watkins came to Nae and I and said, you know what, I want to interview you guys about a recent documentary you made. So we filmed it and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. See you later.
Hello, I am Annie, one of the co-editors for Raid.R, a project based out of Central St Martin's in London. And we, as Raid.R, are reporting on all that is going on in the art world at this current time. Today I'm joined by Nae and Ethan, who are co-producers for a short documentary. And yes, hello Nae and Ethan.
Hello.
Nice to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be on the program.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So first of all, could you tell us who you are and how you met, where you're from?
Yeah.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. Okay, so I am Nae Bailey. I'm a multimedia artist studying at Goucher College. And I am a co-editor and co-producer of the documentary film Adulthood is Overrated with Ethan.
I'm Ethan Staple. I am also a multimedia major at Goucher College. I specialize, though, in being on camera rather than editing, but I'm also a co-producer with Nae.
Cool. That's great. I really loved your film. It was really fun and relatable, and it was just interesting kind of hearing different accounts from people who either totally feel like adults all the time or completely don't feel like adults, even if they have kids and things. So yeah, I was wondering if you could start off by saying how you kind of ended up choosing this theme and what it was like kind of making this film together.
That's a really good question. I mean, to start with, when we got partnered, it was a group project for a class we were taking at Goucher, and we knew we wanted to work together because we both worked in production before but never really together on a project. The issue was that we couldn't really think of a theme. It's not as easy as like, let's do this, let's go. And we had come to the realization that we're graduating in a few months, and we were like, oh my god, we're gonna be adults soon. And we we're having a panic attack, and we're like, wait, everybody else who's in our shoes has to have this exact same feeling. So we thought, why not talk about becoming an adult and being adult? Yeah,
it was just inspired by the situation we were exactly in, and we decided to think of having different perspectives. So we was like, oh, let's ask people who are adults, supposedly, and see like how they feel about it too.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And how did you both get into documentary filmmaking in the first place?
For me personally, I started making documentaries in high school. It was a very small thing where I would be in my school's AV club, and I used to be a history major before I switched to multimedia, so I loved teaching and learning about just things in general. And then when I got to school, it just seemed like the right direction to go in, because I love being creative, but also again, part of it is just education. I love educating people, and being multimedia, educating people with a documentary is, I think, the best way to do that.
I kind of just was like, this seems like the right fit. I like fiction, but I think there's so much more room to tell a story within documentaries, which a lot of people don't believe, because you're just telling the truth. Right. But also the professor that we had, he really inspires me with documentary. That's what he studies, that's what he's really good at, and he just always intrigued me about it, and that class was about documentary filming, so I just dove into it.
Yeah, that's great. And what was it like working together on this project? Specifically.
It was a lot, because when we were given the project, we're still in a pandemic, but we were truly in the full swing of things, where we were really figuring out online schooling. When we shot this, I was in New Jersey and she was in Maryland. Yeah. So it was kind of like, oh crap, what do we do here? Because you have to figure out editing, you have to figure out how we're going to shoot it and get footage to each other. And it was really stressful, and that was part of the issue that we presented to our professor. It was like, how do we do this? And our professor is a very blunt person, so he was kind of like, figure it out. This is how the world works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was also good that we knew each other personally, so that we both knew, okay, these are the limits and this is what each person expects from the group and like what we expect from the film. So having to work with someone, say, that we didn't know and was like, oh, I really don't care about it, would have been harder than working with someone I knew actually cared about the project.
Absolutely. The other thing was we knew each other's skill sets was the thing. Like we knew that we both could edit. We knew we both had the equipment already. So again, going off of Nae's point, if we were put with somebody random, we'd kind of be screwed.
Yeah. So it was really good to know each other and know the skill sets. Like Ethan's really good at figuring out questions, so that was really helpful because I don't know how to ask questions, but I do know how to get people out of their comfort zone to answer the question.
It was also really nice figuring out who we wanted to be in the documentary because, you know, it's also people being comfortable on camera, so we definitely went through, like, the options that we had, and we're like, do we think would give the best answers? Like, we made a composite list. There was a lot of pre-planning before we even hit record on a camera.
Yeah.
So would you say the majority of the work was done beforehand, like the pre-production kind of stuff?
Yeah.
I would say pre-production took at least a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the actual filming of it all took, I would say, a few days, maybe a weekend.
I think it took just a weekend between the both of us.
And then editing, that was on you. How long would you say the editing took?
The editing took maybe like a week and a half, which is the quickest I've ever edited before. So.
We you know, you're put on a timeline of like, you need to get this done at a certain date, but we were lucky enough again because, I guess just because of our skill sets and also just how we work together as a group, that we got it done pretty, like we still had like 5 days before like the due date, and we were very happy to be done with it and be like, we can rest now knowing that we don't have to worry about it anymore until, you know, the day of the premiere.
Because that is quite a quick turnaround for a 15-minute documentary.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Very quick turnaround.
Yeah. And how's your experience been with collaborating in the past, and like how do you see yourselves using collaboration in the future, in future projects and things?
Well, I've mostly worked alone up until now. I've worked mostly alone because I'm very much a perfectionist, but I see perfection in my own light, where it's like, if I work something with somebody, I'm like, they're doing it wrong, I have to do it. But the other thing that I've learned throughout my time of working in production is that if you're working by yourself, it's nearly impossible. You're going to drive yourself nuts. So it's good to find an equal balance. And the other thing is, you don't have to work with your friends. You could work with just a simple production company you've never worked with before. Do your research, but you know, it's helpful to work with friends because you can also level with them instead of, you know, working with strangers and kind of being, you know, dancing around what you want.
And I learned everything about media from collaboration, so for me it was an easy fit to go back into it, but a lot of times whenever I would collaborate with someone, it was all dumped onto me to like learn everything and do it myself, which made me a perfectionist, because then I was like, okay, everything has to be very perfect. But I think in the future what I do want to do with collaborating is just have a lot more fun with it, especially from my experience with Ethan. Having fun and having skill sets that are leveled and you can build upon each other is much better than doing it alone.
I mean, on top of that too, just knowing that when you work with people, whatever you come out with, you know, it's like your child. Like, you've made it as a group of people, you've made this thing, and it will be either on the internet, whatever you make, whether it's artwork, film, even photography. You've worked on it with a group, and you can say, I didn't do this alone, but I'm so proud that I did it with this group of people.
Yeah, that's really great. And do you think adulting is overrated?
I do. I don't know if you do.
Well, yes and no. It's a hard question, and that was part of the reason that we chose that question, because like I can't really say. I'm 21 going on 22. I don't feel like an adult. Like I when I put on this suit this morning, when I go into like the office that I work at, I'm like, I'm playing dress up and pretend. This is me putting on a costume, and I'm going to act like I'm an adult to like older people in my office. And then I go home and I play video games, and I'm a child again. It's like an on and off switch. You're an adult when you want to be an adult, and when you don't want to be an adult, you are not an adult.
Yeah. I think it's just like a bunch of big kids acting like they know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
That's because that's how I feel all the time. I live with my parents, I live with my siblings, I'm in my childhood home, and then I go out and everyone's like, oh, you're 22, so obviously you're an adult. And it's like, not really. Like, I could go to jail as an adult, sure, but everything else about my life is not, it doesn't feel adultish.
Yeah. And that was interesting hearing from other people that is like older people's experience as well.
It was nice having a nice age range of like different people
Yeah.
for the documentary. We had people from 18 all the way up to, how old is your dad?
45, I think.
Yeah, so like it's nice to have that age range because even your
Yeah.
dad was like, you know, people don't feel like an adult even when they when they're like in their 40s. You just
and
don't.
have kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my
Adult
there's
kids.
2 people in the documentary that are my cousins, and they have 2 children. Like but like I know they don't feel like adults. They've told me on and off camera they don't feel like an adult. I can't even imagine what it's like when you have a child, how life changes, but you still can, at the end of the day, say, yeah, I don't feel like I'm an adult. I sit down at night and I'll have a glass of wine and I'm like, I'm just a child sipping juice.
Yeah.
Like, I put my kids to bed, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just so strange.
And what does it feel like to be young adults emerging into the world of work at this time?
Terrifying.
It feels like absolute chaos.
Yeah, because America's in an economic crisis, so jobs aren't the greatest in the world, and that's half of when you're graduating from school is what you want. You want job security, and you can't have that. Part of the thing that I've talked to at least 4 or 5 adults about this, where it's like I say I'm terrified to graduate and go off into the real world, which is true. But what they also tell me is like I have time, even though like I'm leaving a milestone, which is college. I'm 22. It's still very young. I have many years ahead of me, but in the moment I'm also still scared. And I think it's healthy to say that. It's extremely healthy to admit to yourself that like you're not ready, because no one's truly ready to be an adult.
Yeah.
I think it's like the biggest thing I've had to deal with because of this pandemic and all the chaos of graduating and having to go into be an adult is that literally nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
So everyone's kind of on the same level as I am, which is comforting and terrifying at the same time, because it's like, okay, now I have more competition, but then I also have room to fail, and like no one would hold it against me. So that's like the most comforting part about being an adult during this time.
Yeah, that's true, because everyone is in a similar position all over the world, so it's like, and there hasn't really been a time like that before.
Right. Yeah.
So everyone's going to be somewhat understanding wherever you end up or whatever you end up doing.
The way that I look at it now is take everything with a grain of salt. Take everything with a grain of salt.
Everything is at your grasp, or you could lose it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
No pressure, everybody.
No pressure. And here's another question. What other kind of projects are you doing outside of this, or outside of documentary filmmaking? Or
currently I am the host and co-producer of a show called The Dossier, which is an interview show, kind of like, if you watch Conan O'Brien or Jimmy Kimmel. It's kind of like that, where we have artists come in, or just anybody in the media world, and talk about what their current projects are. We have other featured artists that get 1 to 2 minute segments as a commercial break, and then we end each show with a musical guest. It's been a blessing to do, and it's been an amazing time. And I do hope that, after I graduate, because it's a project currently for school, that I keep doing it, because my dream at the end of the day in my career is I become an on-screen host. I know it'll take some time to do that, but I'm happy to be doing it now on YouTube so I can get the experience.
Yeah, and then I get to say I know you, so.
Yeah.
But currently I'm working on a visual album for my final senior project, which has been super fun. Been super grateful for that. I'm working with a bunch of musical artists, helping them produce music that they're coming out with. And then my band Salt is hopefully coming out with an EP at the end of this year. So
yeah, which is super exciting.
it is very exciting.
The moral of the story is Nae's always going to be busier than I.
I don't know if we'll be busy.
Multiple different projects.
Yes.
Yeah. It'll appear as I'm more busier, but it'll really be you.
Cool. Well, it's been so great talking to you both and hearing about the documentary and and hearing about everything else that's been going on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, this was awesome.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you everyone for listening in to our conversation.